Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Crank.
All right, well, welcome to another edition of American Potential. We've talked so much about education. We do a lot of discussion about K through 12 education. Part of the reason is we're breaking barriers all across America in K through 12 education. It's incredible to see what's happening. We see state after state passing education savings accounts and empowering parents and kids to be able to take control of their education. And we've talked so much about that because it's one of the places in education where government really can infringe upon sort of the freedom of parents and kids to be able to have the kind of education that they want. Because, as you know, for so many years, we've limited it to the zip code that kids live in, and that's no way to run an education system. Florida is one of the many states that expanded options for students this year. We've had a former student from Florida on this show to talk about how the state scholarship program helped her from making D's and F's to going to making A's and B's. So you may ask, if Florida already has this program, what could they have just passed that would make it even better? In March of 2023, the Florida legislature passed H.R. 1, which is a universal education savings account, which means all students in the state, universal savings accounts are great, all students in the state are eligible to apply for the scholarship regardless of income. On today's podcast, we have a mom of 5 from Florida as our guest to discuss why she supported H.R. 1 and how it will benefit the state. Aly Legge, thanks for coming on today. Appreciate having you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate all the work you've done exposing all of this. It's great.
Yeah. So now this is interesting. You're the first school board member who earned an endorsement of a sitting governor. Is that right?
Yes, I'm the first school board candidate to ever receive a recommendation or an endorsement from a sitting governor in all of American politics. So it was pretty awesome. I was invited to his press conference to discuss CRT and how it affected my family, as we have experienced some CRT, critical race theory ideologies with my oldest child a couple of years ago. And after I gave my speech, Governor DeSantis was a little speechless and came up in front of the podium and pulled out my card that I handed him backstage. And he just was like, she's running for school board in Hillsborough County. And the whole place just erupted in craziness. So it was very unexpected. And then a few weeks followed up after that, I was interviewed as far as what their process was. They had to rush and get this process together in order to figure out how a governor could endorse nonpartisan candidates. Yeah. It was a little crazy, but I found out I was endorsed just like everybody else did as I was driving to the governor's mansion to have lunch with our first lady, Casey DeSantis. So it was pretty interesting.
That's awesome.
Very, very, very cool.
It must have been a heck of a speech that you gave, I would say, right?
Yes, I tend to do those, actually. They're all on YouTube, so you can go search my name and look them up. I've given quite a few, and a lot of them are pretty spectacular that I've received feedback from. So it has been very interesting.
Well,
sure.
Awesome. And people, if they want to do that, your name is spelled ALY, and then your last name is LEGGE, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that's
so
correct.
If they want to look that up on YouTube or whatever, they can do that. You're also an Army veteran. Tell me about that.
Yes. So I served in 2011, and while I didn't finish my entire enlistment, I ended up becoming medically discharged for fracturing both my feet and my hip while I was doing some exercises, team building exercises while I was in. So while I had every intention of finishing my contract and doing things for our country, God had other plans. And who would have ever thought I'd be in politics? I mean, this was not something that was on my radar, not at all. And then government decided to essentially upset the liberty within me. And being that I took an oath and my husband's taken an oath and I come from a long line of military in my family, things just didn't really quite sit well with me in 2020 when our government decided to tell us who was essential and who wasn't essential. I gathered a group of my mamas and we held a reopen Tampa rally where we had 400 people show up and we made international news that day. And from then on, politics is where I've been. I was actually involved a little bit earlier than that, but more on the medical freedom side, which is a lot of what we're seeing now with the exposure of the corruption with the COVID vaccine and all of that coming to light. That has been something that I've been fighting with other vaccines prior to my run in 22 for school board.
So you're a mom of 5. And, to me, that's always such an example. I love using a family like yours as an example, right? Because this is why we need education savings accounts. I'm just guessing. I don't know any of your kids. I'll bet none of them are exactly the same. Am I right? Do they all have educational needs that are totally different than the other ones?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. They are all very different. They all think very different. They all learn very different. It's even difficult for me to homeschool them on just the way I do it at home. It's a little difficult because they are so very different and they learn so very different. So to have something like an educational savings plan where it's customizable education for each parent to decide which way best works for their child is groundbreaking. So
yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, HR 1 was an important piece of legislation, historic piece of legislation for the state of Florida. But let's talk about what it does. I mean, it's very expansive. It allows you to, go to a different public school if that's what your choice is. It allows you to go to private schools as well, homeschools, if you choose to homeschool. It really is the choice of the parent, right?
Right. 100%. It literally puts education in the hands of the parent and allows them the freedom and the opportunity to choose which educational pathway best fits their child, whether, like you said, whether that's public school, a different public school outside of their zip code or their designated area, or they can use some of that funding to go to a private school. They can even change it to a charter school or do homeschool options. There are a lot of things that you can do. You can even use some of the funding for tutoring and things of that nature. So it really is a groundbreaking, expansive legislation that was passed that I think is much needed. Education has not changed over the last several hundred years. It's been the same. So while everything else is advancing, I think our Florida legislature really decided to put the power back into the hands of the people. And I think they should be commended for that for sure.
Yeah, I think COVID really exposed this. And I mean, we're seeing so many states do it now because there was such frustration on the part of parents throughout COVID with schools being closed and stuff. And you're so right. I mean, we have had a system for, 100 years for the history of our nation, which basically says you go to school. No, it doesn't matter what your 5 kids are like. It doesn't matter if one of them excels in math and one of them has developmental disabilities. None of that matters. What matters is you live in this zip code. That's where you're going to go to school. That is insane that we have operated our education system like that instead of empowering, in the greatest country in the world, empowering parents to make the decision. And you may make a different decision for all 5 of your kids under this law, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The only issue I do see is that when you ask government for more permission, it allows government to give you permission that you already have. So you're setting a precedent for something that probably government shouldn't have access to begin with. We are supposed to be sovereign people, but I do appreciate the challenge that they have risen to risen to. Do you understand what I'm trying
Yeah,
to say here?
no, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, it is still,
Yeah.
I mean, it is revolutionary for us to go really from a
Absolutely.
zip code based system to a system where, even in some of the ESAs as they discuss it, they'll still, if you go to public school, you have to go to the school in your neighborhood or at least to the district in which you live. But under HR 1, this is different, right? You can, if you live in one county in Florida, you can send your kids to a different county if you want to, public school,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep. And I think that's amazing. It really is amazing. It's something that has never been done before. Florida is definitely leading the way in ESA and educational freedom, and providing parents with the liberties that they have already possessed. But it's more solidified in the legislature now, so it's really good.
Yeah. So Florida already had a tax credit scholarship. So tell me how this is different.
So this is different because it allows, it does focus on low income families, so they will continue to get priority. But it doesn't matter with this law. It doesn't matter what income you have. So anybody with any kind of income can apply for the ESA to be a part of this groundbreaking legislation for educational freedom. So yeah, that completely goes out the window.
So
everybody can apply. It doesn't matter if you make $100,000 a year or you make, $35,000 a year, you can still apply. And those that are low income families will still receive priority. Yeah.
Yeah. And Florida already has a program for special needs students. They already have a program for lower income students. So how will this impact them?
It doesn't impact them at all. This just expands, it opens up the door for all families and not just families of specific categories. So this really it's opening, I consider it opening the floodgates for educational freedom for all our families here in Florida.
I think it has a profound impact.
They're not affected at all.
Yeah, and I think it has a profound impact on public schools as well. Your thoughts on that? I mean, what this will do for competition amongst public schools?
Absolutely. You said it just perfect. It will increase competition. It allows our public schools, those that are sitting on the board, our administration, those that sit downtown in a lot of our districts, they are going to have to become very creative with trying to draw back parents back into the district schools. Right now, since 2020, we have realized parents have had this open door into what is actually going on in our classrooms. And what we've found is that we are not happy with the return on investment that we've been given. Parents are the main consumers of public education. And if we do not agree with how our children are being educated or what they're being educated on, we as parents have that ability and should always have that option to remove our children from the public school that they are in and either change to a different public school or change a different route of schooling for our children. And that is exactly what is going to happen. We've gotten actually a lot of pushback from a lot of other organizations that say that this legislation will strip away and take away money from our public schools, when in fact they're not really lying in a way, but they're also kind of exacerbating the outcome with that. So while yes, per student funding happens when you have a certain amount of students that are in a school, so the school receives a certain amount of funding per student. And when you remove those students from that school, they no longer receive that funding. However, that funding does follow the child. So the funding can go to a different public school in the district or a different public school in a different district, or you can take that money and take it to a private school or you can choose to homeschool. So it does keep competition very high, but a lot of our elected representatives and those that we have hired to be administrators need to think outside the box a little bit in order to raise that bar of competition.
Yeah, and it really is all about competition, right? I mean, that's what's been missing in the system for all of these, well, for over a century now. That's what's been missing in the system. And I don't blame people in a system for trying to protect a monopoly. That's what sort of monopolies do. And I get that. If you just get funding handed to you every year and you get to go back and say, well, we need a 3% increase or a 6% increase year after year after year, I mean, I don't worry that somebody's doing that. That's kind of human nature that they would do that. But it's a system that doesn't focus on the kid, right? It's a system that doesn't focus on educating the kid. This is now a system that will take that competition. And again, everybody should be on an equal footing. Public schools, private schools, home schools, those should all be choices, and parents are going to pick the best one for their child.
Absolutely. So we've had over the last several years, we've had school board members literally say that parents don't know what's best for their children while they have sat on the dais during public meetings, which is an indication that either the school board member or the school district is completely ignorant in the fact of what their actual job is supposed to be, and that parents are the main consumers of public education. They are providing a need, but they're also providing a service. And like I said before, if we are not getting the proper return on investment, parents that are invested in their children's education 100% will do the research and make sure that they are choosing the best option for their children. And having the ability to do that really sets the child up for much more success than just shoving them into a public school system that is really only focused on how much money they can receive each year and where that money goes. And we've noticed over the last several years that administration, the amount of money that has gone into admin, it has skyrocketed. It's about 400%, where we still can't pay our teachers a proper, income in order for them to survive based off of, going to school, working in the school system. A lot of their pay is still only $45,000 a year, which is really difficult to get by, especially now during inflation. So while we do have public schools that are complaining about this, I do think that they should just think outside the box and try to come up with different solutions on how they can best serve those that are choosing to use their facility. I do agree that it will provide some much needed restructuring of our public schools, where right now we have a lot of schools that do not follow the teacher to student ratio. We have way too many students and not enough teachers. But that is also indicative of the times we are in. There's a lot of parents and teachers that are leaving the profession, one, because they're unhappy where they are, they're not getting enough money, they're not getting the respect they need, and the behavior in the classroom is absolutely is ridiculous, as well as some of the educational tools that they're using. So HB1 was definitely needed, and we are so glad that it's actually passed and it's in law right now. So,
well, and won't competition help bring about change in some of those areas, like student teacher ratios and pay for good teachers? I mean, it seems to me that's what's been missing, and that's why good teachers don't get paid well, is there isn't competition that delineates between good teachers and bad teachers. And, for you to survive in a system of competition, you have to provide good pay to good teachers. I mean, it's just common sense. It's the free market. It works everywhere else in America. There's no reason it wouldn't work in our K through 12 education system.
Oh, absolutely. And then this kind of removes a little bit of the stronghold that the unions have on our teachers, because the reason why a lot of the teachers that are performing badly or not up to standard is because the unions are protecting those kinds of teachers. They really aren't for assisting the teachers that are the veteran ones that are doing, above and beyond. And really the only other place that you can go anywhere else in America, in any other job forum, you have the ability to advance, right? But here in public schools, when you're a teacher, it's really difficult for you to gain advancement in pay unless you're moving up to becoming an administrator in downtown or at your district level. And most teachers don't want to become a principal, or most teachers don't want to become some kind of administration on their district level. They want to be, a teacher that is in the profession for 30 years, but also gets paid like they've been in the profession for 30 years. You can't be, for example, a recruiter for a company and be, and do that for 20 years and still get paid the same amount that you did when you started. That you will lose people that way. Right. And that is what has happened. So this definitely I think does open up that door a little bit to help, again, be a little more creative on what they can do for it to help us and assist our teachers in becoming the best that they can be and raising the bar as far as their pay goes, because we do need to compensate our good teachers for sure, 100%.
We do. I'll tell a quick story. One of my sisters was an award-winning public school teacher, art teacher, used art in a way to get to kids that otherwise couldn't be gotten to, and to get them to understand the importance of doing something with your life and those sorts of things. She was a non-union teacher in her school district. She showed up the first day of class, went to get her list of students and looked at it for the new year. And, she had like 33 kids in her class. The other art teacher in the school had 18. And she says, man, that's a lot of kids. And the union shop steward walked by right as she saw that. And he said to her, well, if you join the union, maybe you'd have fewer kids in your class. Now, how we could defend a system like that would put more kids into one class as another, as a way of punishing someone for not joining the union, that is wrong. We can't ever defend a system like that. But those are the kinds of things, the games that go on in a system when you take the free market and freedom and choice out of a system. Any thoughts on that?
There's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy and politics that goes on behind closed doors. And I think that's in every industry, but it's terrible that it is in our public education system where it shouldn't be. The focus always should be on our children and the quality of education that we're giving our students. Right now, we have other countries like Japan that are teaching their children in kindergarten or first grade or elementary school calculus and things of that nature, and setting them up truly for success in the world that we live in now and where the future is going. We're here in America, we are throwing, drag queen, story hour, and we're consistently talking about, educating the whole child and trying to get them to be emotionally intelligent. And we're focusing on things that are not necessarily assisting our children for the future of America. We're actually taking them back several years, especially when we're allowing biological males to participate in female sports. So we're completely removing safety precautions for our young girls. But we're also not educating them on an equal, I would say, level as other places. And we used to be this big, America was this world power where, people not really just feared us, but they looked to us, right, to see what we were doing and the innovations that we were bringing. And I don't think we've had very many, big innovations over the last several years. I think we've kind of been very stagnant, but that is due to how we are teaching our children and the quality of education that we are bringing to the table. And bills like this, educational savings accounts and free market education is how you put it. I really like how you put that. I think that's really important. Because that will allow teachers and our government, when it comes to public schools, to figure out how we can best educate our children to be set up for future.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Totally agree with that. A couple other things I wanted to talk about. This bill, I think there's a lot of homeschoolers that look at this, home educators who look at it and worry that the state's going to tell them what to do and that sort of thing. In Florida, if you don't participate in this program and you don't apply for the scholarship and you're a home educator, there's no more intrusion by the state into home education than there is today, right?
That is 100% accurate. This is a choice. If you're a home educator and you do not choose to participate in this legislation in the ESA, then you do not have to. It is application only. It is not forced upon anyone. Our homeschoolers, we already have laws on the books that protect homeschool or home education, because there's a little bit of a difference between home education and a homeschooling. They tried to do homeschooling when we did remote learning, where you would have a teacher in a classroom and then everybody was set up on laptops at home. That's different than home education. And so I think the distinction is very important to understand, but also we here in Florida is very unique. We already had laws on the books that protected home education. And if you want to participate in the ESA, then that's great. And if not, then that's your choice as well. So it really is up to you.
You plan to home educate again. And what is it about that fits your family or your kids?
Well, one for one, I have one of my children is on the spectrum, and he has a really hard time being in a classroom with other children. That it's a lot of noise, and he can't really get that one-on-one that he really needs in order for him to grasp a topic that he feels is a little difficult for him. So I think homeschooling for him is going to be great. It was great when we participated, and we did it a few years ago. But I ran for school board and wasn't sure if I was going to be able to home educate and run at the same time, or actually do the job as a school board member. So I put him back in a charter, and he's done pretty good, but he still has his struggles. So, but yes, because all of my children learn very differently, I do think that home education is the best option for us. It also opens up the door for them to do other things. They can, when they get their education done within a few hours, they don't have to sit down for 8 hours in a day to learn all that they need to learn for the subject or the topics that they're learning in that day. They can learn them within a 4-hour time block. And then that opens the door for sports and learning musical instruments and doing things that they find interest in to help them grow. We can make that a part of their education. You're always learning, right? You don't have to learn things inside of 4 walls, right? And it doesn't have to be a licensed professional that is always teaching you. The things that I've learned as an adult and even as a kid, it wasn't always in front of a licensed educator. It wasn't always, in a classroom or in a building. I've learned a lot from the people that I've had around me, and my children do the same. So it really is important that we don't look at education as an institution. Education is just the quest for learning anything. So as long as we keep that in mind, I think that helps balance out, what's really going on.
Right. Just if somebody wants to learn a little bit more, if they're living in Florida or they're thinking of moving to Florida because it has good education laws.
Yeah.
If any of those things are true, how can they find out more about House Bill 1? And where can they go to find out more information?
Well, you could always go to myfloridahouse.gov and type in HB1. It's there, and you can read through all of the documents. I even have a list of talking points and a breakdown of what it looks like, what the bill looks like. The language is. They do it on purpose. It's a little hard to understand sometimes, but you can always come shoot me a Facebook message. I'm on Facebook at Aly Legge. And you can also email me at ally@momsforamerica.net, and I can give you all the information you need for this to discuss this bill here. Yeah,
well, that's awesome. And by the way, I think I may have erroneously called it HR1. It's HB1. In the state legislature, it's called HB, and in the U.S. Congress, bills are called HR. So,
so it's like House resolution, right? House resolution for Congress, and then it's a House bill for state.
Right.
And I actually teach this, so it's really interesting. We do with Moms for America. I'm the director of what's called Empower Moms, and we empower families to literally cover everything from the kitchen table all the way to Congress. So if you want information on how to homeschool your kids or what public school options there are for you in your state, I can give you resources for that. If you want to join webinars or trainings or run for school board or anything of that nature, I can help you, assist you with that. And if you want to discuss how to become a family lobbyist, essentially a citizen lobbyist, we can discuss that. I can give you resources. If you want to learn about what laws that are coming down and being passed in our Congress and in your state and how it affects you as a person, I can definitely help you with that. So always visit momsforamerica.us for more information. But you can also email me at ally@momsforamerica.net, and I'll be happy to connect with you and help you with any resources that you need.
That's great. Aly, thanks so much. I mean, thanks not only for joining us on the podcast, but more importantly, thanks for getting involved and for not just focusing on your own kids, because most parents, there's a lot of parents out there who they just send their kid to school and it's like, I pick them up and that's it. Then there's parents that focus on their kids and say, I want more for my kids, and I'm going to do everything to make their education the best. Then there's the parents like you who say, that's not good enough. I have my kids, but I also have to care about society. I also have to care about my community. And so I'm going to run for school board, or I'm going to work to get HB1 passed in Florida so that it helps every kid in Florida. But I just want to thank you for doing that, because that means so much to every single kid in Florida and really in America, that there are people like you who get out there and make a difference. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Ben Franklin said it best. We have a republic if you can keep it. And the only way you can keep it is if you're educated on what it actually means. And liberty is an action word. You have to actually exercise your rights, but you have to know what they are first. And so if not now, then when? If not you, then who, right? So you have to be involved. It's for the betterment of our entire country. It's not just what's best for your children, because our children go out into the world and they become, community members, or, the next CEOs, the next president, the next legislators, the next firefighters. They are the future. So if we're not properly educating them on what they need to know, especially based in our foundational principles of what America truly is, then we will surely lose it for the next generation. And we are there. We're on the cusp right here. So get involved, y'all.
Yeah, that's so well said, Aly. Thank you again for joining us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, listen, thanks for joining us today. You can send me an email, jeff@americanpotential.com. Would love to hear from you. Thanks for making this podcast so successful. I mean, we just keep continuing to grow at an amazing rate. And it's all because of you. And thanks to you for bringing these stories to us and for listening. Truly, America has such great potential, and Americans have such great potential. Thanks for joining us on another edition of American Potential.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.